across Texas. The issue is.
I'm Rudy Koski in Austin.
I'm Greg Krugen in Houston.
And I'm Stephen Dial in Dallas, and this is Texas. The issue is.
The 89th regular session of the Texas legislature set to end on Monday. Sine die finally in reach after last week's frantic final push for big votes to meet critical deadlines and save some big issues. Just as the dust was starting to settle, Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick ran into me and spoke with me. He gave an assessment on what was and wasn't accomplished this session, and later he called a news conference to talk about the last-minute efforts to get Governor Greg Abbott to veto SB 3, that controversial ban on THC hemp products.
We're on the verge of the best productive session ever for conservatives and for Republicans, but for all Texans. Look, school choice, the biggest amount of money ever put into public education, the biggest pay raises, a $200,000 homestead exemption for seniors, meaning almost all seniors in the state will never have to pay school property taxes again for as long as they own their home. We'll put the 10 Commandments back in the classrooms, prayer back in the classroom, and just a litany of bills that are going to change the face of Texas.
The clock did run out on some priorities. Notable legislative deaths include a crackdown on mail-order abortion pills, proof of citizenship for voting, some restrictions on gender identity, bail bans for undocumented immigrants, and violent repeat offenders.
Will there always be some bill that didn't make it? Of course, but school choice alone would be a session. The public financing for public education and how we're redoing that and focusing on teachers and students really for the first time. That would be a session bill. All of these big issues alone would be a session if you just passed one of them, and we're passing all of them. And the property tax, of course, I'm the homestead exemption guy. When I got here, it was $15,000. The Senate raised it to 25, raised it to 40, last time to 100. So this time it'll be 140 for those under 65.
And the seniors.
200 for seniors.
The Lieutenant Governor during the session did not shy away from doing some political arm twisting and making an occasional threat to force a special session if some of his priority bills failed in the House.
There's been less arm twisting this session than ever, better communication than ever. The relationship between the Speaker's office and the Lieutenant Governor's office is light years where it's been the last 4 years where there was no communication, quite frankly. The relationship between the senators and the House members, Republican and Democrats, better than it's ever been. And you're always going to bump your head along the way somewhere and someone says something you're not happy, but I mean that's been almost non-existent. So we came here to do a lot of work for the people of Texas, and when they see all the bills that are going to impact their lives positively, it's going to be just a great session.
For Patrick, legacy legislation from this session may not be the hot button bills.
I wouldn't want to be Lieutenant Governor in any other place but Texas, where you can do these big things like one of my priorities was dementia. $3 billion to study that over 10 years because Alzheimer's reaches over 500,000 people and impacts all those families. And we're getting that poisonous drug of THC off the streets.
There was a late fight over SB 3, which bans THC products.
You don't know what's in it. No one knows what's in it. This is not a game.
The unregulated product showcased by Patrick was done in response to calls for Governor Abbott to veto SB 3, which could trigger a special session. Patrick spoke to me about how expansion of the medical marijuana law was offered as a compromise.
We are now launching the biggest compassionate use, TCUP, Texas Compassionate Use Program. So it's already covered people with PTSD, veterans, cancer, and other
and chronic pain now,
but now chronic pain, very tight. We don't want to go back in the old days where anyone writes a script for a pain pill and cause the opioid.
Dr. Nick.
Yes, but so tight, and the TCUP program right now there are only 3 licenses. We're making it 12 licenses. The first time ever they can have satellite location so that everyone can be covered around the state.
For those that don't understand, that Dr. Nick reference was a reference to Elvis Presley's infamous doctor. Well, a lot of bills certainly washed out last week, and the Lieutenant Governor was quick to get into the political spin cycle, which is a good way to describe what he said about the session. Greg, in a word, how would you describe what Patrick said?
Rudy, my word is bulldozed, as basically what Patrick did to Democrats.
Yeah, right. Stephen, give me a word.
All right, my word is consumable or gummy, because why is he so concerned about SB 3 if if the governor's going to sign it, right? We'll talk about that probably soon.
Right, gum up the works. Well, with that, we'll take a break. When the Texas Trio comes back, we'll take a deeper look into the Lieutenant Governor's pre-sine die assessment. Welcome back to Texas. The issue is, our issue now is how Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick is trying to wrap up the 89th session of the Texas legislature. Greg, the game clock hits 0 on Monday. What's the take in Houston about all this?
All right, Rudy, elections have consequences. Texas Republicans own the legislature, and Democrats, still reeling from the November defeat, got bulldozed this session more thoroughly than usual. School choice, criminal bond reform, THC ban, DEI elimination, 10 commandments and prayer time mandated on public schools. Conservatives dang near ran the table, and frankly, you have to look really hard to find any top-tier wins for Team Blue. And don't get me wrong, Democrats worked the clock as best they could to kill off a handful of measures that Patrick and Burrows didn't move to the top of their list. But bottom line, and you guys may disagree, but it sure seemed to me that after school choice went down, Democrats were basically gut punched for the rest of the session. No filibusters, no walkouts, just making it to the final bell. Stephen?
Yeah, it did seem like an all or nothing. Stephen, what are you hearing in Dallas about the session?
Yeah, and you know, Houston, where Greg is, Dallas, where I am, has a lot of Democrats there in the Texas legislature, but Republicans as well. And I agree with Greg. I mean, this was, if anyone after sine die says that this was not a conservative session, they are maybe on gummies that Dan Patrick was talking about or something like that, because all of the legislation that has gotten across the finish line now, will Governor Abbott sign certain key ones? I think he will. I'm not talking about SB 3, but all of the key things, any criticism of Dustin Burrows allowing Democrats to do whatever they want is just false. I mean, look at 10 Commandments in the classroom, just those types of bills that traditionally have not crossed the House, past the House. And so I think it's a huge win for Republicans, but also I wonder if the Republican infighting will stop, because you can't say this session was not conservative.
Yeah, but you got to have a lot of strategy, and the Republicans seem to have at least a working strategy. House Democrats, they dug in while debating several hot issues. They defended sex changes for children, opposed removing sexually explicit books in school libraries, fought against posting the 10 Commandments in schools. They advocated for repeat criminal offenders and undocumented immigrants who commit crimes during the bail reform debates. Old school Democrats like Richard Raymond urged party members not to fall into what could be a ballot box trap. Greg, do your sources think that those positions will hurt Democrats in the midterms, or will it just be forgotten?
Look, Rudy, I think Houston area Democrats were actually relieved when they didn't have to toe a party line and vote against SJR 5, the constitutional amendment granting judges more power to keep violent offenders without bail and behind bars pending trial. Here in Harris County, where more than 200 innocent people have been murdered by predators out on bond, those Democrats would have faced angry, well-funded, highly motivated opposition in the next cycle. And my guess is many justifiably labeled soft on crime would not have survived. Fortunately for them, somebody with stroke in the Democratic Party can read a poll, because battling for the rights of predators at the expense of crime victims will get you beat in Texas. Stephen?
Yeah, I'm wondering if this could be carry over into the coming, maybe the Senate race. Stephen, what are you thinking?
Yeah, I mean, we'll have to wait and see, right? You don't want to get ahead of yourselves. But Democrats definitely have to figure out what their lane is. And we've talked about this all session, right? They have to figure out what their lane is. And will their lane be hoping that Ken Paxton wins the Republican primary nomination, so that maybe it'll make a Democrat more palatable, more appeasing to them? And then which Democrat is it? I know we'll talk about that on another Sunday. But Democrats really have to find their lane. This session, they weren't really able to do anything, but some things, little things, did not pass. So maybe they'll take that as a win.
Greg, quickly, for the Republicans, is the wild card the THC ban, the medical marijuana expansion, not really going as far as what someone?
Look, Rudy, it's a head scratcher for me. Why would you push that stuff out on the street and give the cartel a big money maker? Head scratcher.
You agree, Stephen?
Right,
and take us to the break.
Yeah, I agree. We'll have to see what the governor does. I think it's a big topic. Coming up, we'll hear from the Texas Democrat Party chair. Welcome back. We heard from Texas Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick on the Republican take of this session. Now we hear from the Democrat side. I spoke to Kendall Scudder, the new chairman of the Texas Democrat Party. How would you grade the legislative session?
Can you do less than an F? I mean, it's just absolutely outrageous. These Republicans that have been in charge of the legislature this cycle are more interested in doing the bidding of a bunch of billionaires out in West Texas than the people that live in their districts. That's why they're passing bills to give coupons to rich people to send their kids to fancy private schools on your kids' backs. It's why they're shutting down community schools. It's why they're eliminating taxes on stock trades, but not doing anything to reduce your community property taxes. Everything that they do is about how do they serve those billionaires whose boots they lick, and not how they serve the people of Texas. They get a big fat F from me.
The Democrats were kind of put in between a rock and a hard place on certain topics, specifically some of these constitutional amendments that did pass with Democrat support, specifically SJR 5, when it would come to allowing a judge to deny bond for certain criminal offenses. What was your role in that discussion, or what is your take of that discussion? Is that something that Democrats did to appear not soft on crime, but not totally bending to the reforms that Republicans wanted with bail?
Democrats aren't soft on crime. Democrats are just doing the very best that they can to make sure we have a humane justice system and that every person is given due process, whether they are rich or they are poor. My role in the legislative session is not heavy-handed. I'm a political elected. So as the chair of the state party, I don't drive legislative agendas. That's our legislators. And they're going to do what they feel is in the best interest of their districts. And you see a lot of diversity ideologically within our party on a lot of different issues.
I've seen some of your interviews since you took this role, and you talked about the Texas Democrat Party needing to change. Talk about those changes.
Yeah, I mean, look, part of having a 35-year-old progressive chair of the Texas Democratic Party means a couple of things. Number one, we don't just take punches anymore. We're going to throw them too. Number two, we're going to show up in every corner of the state, even areas where we don't perform well, because if we never even walk in the door to deliver our message to people, why would we be surprised when those people aren't voting for us?
Do you think Texas Democrats have to get back to talking about kitchen table items and not so much focused on social issues?
Yeah, I mean, look, we're a coalition party where we have a lot of different people with a lot of different perspectives underneath our umbrella, but they all have one common moral thread, and it's that they all pay their bills. And so as a result, we have to be making sure that people within our coalition, we're talking about how to make life more affordable for people. How do we make housing more affordable? How do we make sure that you can go to a hospital when you're sick? How do we make sure we can put your kid in a quality public school? People like Donald Trump and Greg Abbott, they're always worried about what these billionaires are going to do because that's their donors and their owners are telling them what to do. Somebody has to be advocating for the working people of this country. I believe that's the lane for the Democrats. It's who we are, it's who we've always been, and it's who I believe we need to get back to.
And I think a lot of people, at least Democrats, some may think that Democrats need to get back to doing certain things. Rudy, now Kendall Scudder did toe the company line and use some talking points that Democrats said throughout the session, but he also said some things that I haven't heard Democrats talk about in a while. And some parts of the interview wasn't even able to include of him talking about campaigning more in communities that he doesn't call rural. He said in other states they'll be considered urban centers, these areas that have 100,000 people. What do you take from that interview?
Wow. That was something, wasn't it? Essentially, from what I heard and from what Scudder said, really is just more of the same old talking points. Doublespeak, certainly, with a slightly different spin, but the same. Blame the rich for the school voucher plan, but research clearly shows there's strong support for school choice from low-income and minority families, and some of them are going to benefit. Claim you're not soft on crime, but Then during the session, we heard the arguments of arguing for protecting violent repeat offenders, and claiming them that they're victims and need to be protected from the justice system, and undocumented immigrants who commit crimes are their constituents and have a right to be released back into the community, not held by ICE agents. The core problem remains, despite some pundits and progressives claiming that social issues don't matter. Social issues do matter, especially for moderates and independent voters. They have told us that election after election. And they're not part of this new big coalition Democratic Party, of however he wants to describe it. Remember, that's the party that threw out its own primary votes in the last election cycle while continuing to say that the other party is the threat to democracy. A lot of doublespeak, Stephen.
All right. Greg Grugan, Scudder talked about changes needing to be made, but I mean, as he mentioned, Democrats is a big coalition, a big tent, right? And so how do Democrats balance, like Rudy was talking about, basically not pissing off the people who are their base, but also trying to attract people who may be leaving the party or disinterested in the party?
Stephen, how about not excommunicating moderates in their party, just for starters? I mean, here in Houston, Mayor John Whitmire is a perfect example. For 5 decades, he's been a legislative warhorse on most progressive issues. And since his election a year and a half ago, Whitmire has done a pretty remarkable job cleaning up the mess left by the previous Democratic mayor. Financially pragmatic, tough on crime, but also compassionate. And yet folks on the left have labeled him a dino, Democrat in name only. It's the kind of hyper-zealotry and exclusion which ensures getting beat statewide for the foreseeable future. And don't get me wrong, Texas Republicans, to their detriment, do it too. It's just that right now, when Texans in a general election have a choice between extreme right or extreme left, they consistently opt for the conservative choice. Stephen?
Rudy, Scudder told me, and I wasn't able to really include this part, but Scudder told me he didn't think that Democrats got enough out of the percentage of Democrats that elected Dustin Burrows to be Speaker of the House. Do you think Democrats got enough out of that deal? Do you think Burrows or the House blocked enough things that Democrats really didn't want to pass?
That was a pick your poison deal. It wasn't a deal on issues, certainly, Stephen. You know, and you kind of touched on this earlier, but, you know, some of the hardline Republicans actually believe Burrows gave the Democrats too much leeway during this session, right? And that's almost laughable. I would argue that Democrats in the State House continue to miss opportunities to craft compromise legislation. It can be done, like the Maine bail reform bill that went through. It went from a hard no to bail to one that's more transparent and one that does not allow for an easy get out of jail card. Everyone wins on that one. They use the leverage of the 100 vote requirement on that issue. Smart move, but with other red meat issues, they dig in and complain that their only strategy is to obstruct. You know, it's tough being outnumbered. I get it, but unfortunately, compromise remains a political 4-letter word, Stephen.
Greg, what do you think?
I agree with Rudy. I mean, seriously, how much do you guys think Democrats would have gotten from the Patrick Paxton Wilkes Dunn candidate David Cook? The fact that they got vice chairs, a handful of compromises, and some hard right measures killed by the clock was the best deal they could hope for, considering the alternative. Like we've all said before, elections have consequences. Fact is, if Scudder wants more concessions, he needs to flip some seats. That is, after all, his job, right? All right.
That is true.
We've got issues, and like it or not, we're set to unload them on the other side of this break. Welcome back. One of the perks, I guess, of being a member of the Fox Texas Trio is we get to unload our personal issues at the end of every show. This week, I'm really peeved about NIL money. I mean, seriously, does anybody think that what's going on in collegiate sports is in any way, in any universe, fair? I mean, the arms race of money that's going on, where kids can play for maybe 4 or 5 different football teams, basketball teams within a career. It's just not fair. Even the NBA and the NFL have contracts and salary caps. I mean, we got to get some fairness back into this. Stephen, what's your beef?
Hey, I'm for college athletes getting paid, but I agree with you. There should be some guardrails on it. My beef is also sports related. Now, I am so happy that the University of Texas is opening the season on the road in the Horseshoe against Ohio State. And guess what? That airs right here on Fox. What I'm a little perturbed about, why didn't Texas make this a night game? Apparently, allegedly, Texas had the option of making it a night game under the lights opening the season. Are the Longhorns scared that Ohio State will be, unveiling their banner on the opening night? And they're like, we don't want the fans to be so hydrated for a night game. Last time I checked, Dogs are SEC champs, reigning SEC champs. But that's my issue. Why was Texas scared of making it a night game? Now it's a big noon Saturday game, but it's on Fox, so I shouldn't be mad. Rudy, what is your issue?
Okay, I'm not going to punt on the sports theme that we got here, but my issue is that, this is a summer, at that point of the summer when there is so much out there. I mean, you got basketball, you got baseball, you've got some summer league football, and what's getting lost in this is something that's pretty amazing that's going on. The Dallas Stars are playing some great hockey, and their farm club, the Texas Stars, are in the finals. Two great hockey programs storming through their playoff situation can get the championship and not getting a lot of love. So, Stars? All right, we'll end it with that. You can see this and our other issue interviews on our YouTube pages.
And keep the conversation going on social media.
And when you see us next week, lawmakers will have buttoned up the legislative session, and we'll be here to unpack it all. Until then, don't forget to let us know what you think the issue is.